Ambassador Elena Reyes adjusted the collar of her dress uniform as the massive doors to the Hegemony Council chamber parted. The neural implant at the base of her skull tingled, Earth's most advanced technology providing real-time translations and cultural context that would have been impossible just a decade ago. "Remember," came the voice of Lieutenant Commander Marcus Chen through her discreet earpiece, "they'll try to intimidate you. That's their first move with every new species." Elena nodded almost imperceptibly. The psychological brief on the galactic hegemony had been thorough. An empire spanning thousands of star systems, comprised of species that had been spacefaring when humans were still discovering agriculture. The chamber itself was designed to overwhelm. Vaulted ceilings stretched hundreds of meters overhead, shimmering with constellations representing conquered territories. The council members themselves sat on elevated platforms, physically and symbolically looking down on petitioners. The human ambassador approaches, announced a multi-tone voice that seemed to originate from everywhere at once. Elena Reyes of Sol System, third planet, representing the self-named United Coalition of Earth. Elena detected the subtle emphasis on self-named, the linguistic jab meant to reinforce humanity's junior status. She continued her measured pace toward the central podium, refusing to appear rushed or nervous, despite the 12 pairs of alien eyes tracking her every movement. Lord Vextor, the archon of the hegemony, occupied the highest position. His mercury-like form shifted continuously, reflecting the chamber's lights in hypnotic patterns, an evolutionary adaptation that, according to briefing materials, often disoriented other species during negotiations. "We welcome Earth's first formal representative." Vextor's voice rippled like his physical form. "Though we find it accelerated that a species barely 4 decades into faster-than-light travel presumes to request full diplomatic recognition." A subtle wave of amusement passed through the chamber. Elena had been warned about this too. The casual dismissiveness, the assumption of superiority baked into their cultural framework after 8 millennia of dominance. Instead of immediately responding, she activated the holographic display embedded in her podium. A 3-dimensional representation of the Milky Way galaxy appeared, highlighting the massive hegemony territories in gold and Earth's minuscule explored region in blue. "Esteemed Council, I thank you for this audience. Humanity recognizes its humble position in this vast community of worlds." She paused, watching the slight relaxation among several council members. Precisely the reaction she had anticipated. However, she continued, expanding a section of the display to show technological development curves. "What we lack in territory, we make up for in adaptation rate. In 40 years, we've progressed from our first FTL prototype to developing independent innovations in quantum computation, gravitational manipulation, and biosynthetic interfaces." The Kivoth representative, an insectoid being known for scientific expertise, leaned forward with newly focused compound eyes. "These development rates exceed documented patterns for all known species." "Precisely," Elena agreed. "Humanity doesn't seek diplomatic recognition based on our territory or military capacity, but on our potential as trade partners and scientific collaborators." She gestured, changing the display to show Earth's rare resource deposits and unique biological compounds. For instance, our planetary biosphere has developed several enzyme chains with properties we believe are unknown in hegemony pharmacology. Early tests suggest applications for treating degenerative neural conditions common among the Tresic species. The Tresic counselor, a being of crystalline structure who had remained dismissively silent, suddenly straightened. Elena continued her presentation, methodically addressing each council member's specific interests, information gathered through years of covered observation and careful analysis. By the 4th economic proposal, 3 councillors had requested private audiences. By the 6th cultural exchange initiative, even Vextor's fluid form had stilled, his attention fully captured. What none in the chamber realized was that Ambassador Reyes wasn't merely negotiating. She was gathering intelligence with every interaction, every reaction. cataloging weaknesses in the Empire's seemingly impenetrable political armor. As the session concluded, Alina caught a glimpse of Vextor conferring urgently with his aides, his mercurial form darkening to a gunmetal gray. She maintained her diplomatic smile, but inside, she felt the first prickle of concern. Something in the Archon's posture suggested he recognized the threat that humanity represented, not militarily, but fundamentally. A species that advanced too quickly to be easily controlled didn't fit the hegemony's carefully calibrated system of dominance and subjugation. That night, after sending her official communications to Earth, she recorded a private message with a quantum-encrypted protocol that even the hegemony's advanced monitoring systems couldn't detect. Admiral Hernandez, she spoke softly to her mentor back on Earth. Activate contingency protocols. I believe we may need them sooner than expected. The crystalline spire caught the triple sunset of Nexus Prime, fracturing the light into kaleidoscopic patterns across the grand banquet hall. Alina studied her reflection in a polished surface. 3 days of negotiations had been unexpectedly productive, culminating in tonight's ceremonial acceptance. I don't like this, Commander Chen muttered, adjusting the ceremonial sidearm that the hegemony protocol insisted was purely decorative. His combat implants had been scanning the room continuously, mapping exit routes and security positions. The Archon was too quick to offer the sigil ceremony. Alina nodded slightly. I know. High Council Representative Trezik warned me during our private meeting that several council members are uncomfortable with our progress. Then why attend? Chen's hand instinctively checked the emergency beacon concealed in his formal uniform. Because refusing would confirm their suspicions that we're hostile. Alina's eyes tracked a group of hegemony security officers repositioning near the main entrance. Besides, this is the perfect opportunity to map their security protocols. The neural implant at her skull base was doing far more than translation. It was collecting data on every system it encountered, building a comprehensive map of hegemony defenses and communication networks. Information that might prove vital if diplomacy failed. A melodic tone reverberated through the chamber, signaling the ceremony's commencement. The assembled dignitaries, representatives from over 70 worlds, moved to their designated positions with practiced precision. Ambassador Reyes, the Archon's voice flowed like his liquid metal form as he approached the central dais. Your presence honors us. Few species have demonstrated such remarkable aptitude for galactic diplomacy. Alina detected the slight hesitation, a linguistic marker that her translation implant flagged as potential deception. She maintained her diplomatic smile as she ascended the steps to the ceremonial platform. The honor is humanity's, Archon. We look forward to a productive relationship with the hegemony. As she took her position at the center of the platform, Chen's voice came through her earpiece, tense and urgent. Alina, their security grid is reconfiguring. Energy signatures shifting. This isn't standard protocol. Before she could respond, a subtle vibration passed through the floor. Then stillness. Too much stillness. The ambient sound of the gathering had ceased entirely. Alina attempted to turn toward Chen, but found herself immobilized, held in place by an invisible force field. A remarkable adaptation of stasis technology, the Archon said, circling her frozen form. The pretense of diplomacy had vanished from his tone. It selectively targets non-hegemony biosignatures, quite useful for dealing with disruptions. Alina could move only her eyes, watching as similar fields had ensnared her entire diplomatic team. Only Chen appeared partially mobile. His military-grade neural overrides fighting the stasis effect. The Council has deliberated on humanity's position in the Galactic Order. The Archon continued, withdrawing a ceremonial blade from its scabbard, a curved golden implement that gleamed under the chamber's lights. Your acceleration curve threatens stability. Your adaptability defies control. Your potential concerns us. Alina found she could still speak, though barely. The Coalition will interpret this as an act of war. The Coalition will understand its proper place, the Archon replied. Behind him, The ceremonial cameras activated, their feeds connecting to transmission points across the hegemony and to the human diplomatic vessels in orbit. This demonstration will ensure appropriate humility from Earth. With deliberate slowness, he raised the blade. Elena's eyes remained fixed on his, defiant even in immobility. "You mistake our nature, Archon," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite the stasis field. "Humanity doesn't break under pressure. We transform." The blade descended with ceremonial precision, piercing her heart. As consciousness began to fade, Elena's gaze remained locked on the transmission cameras, knowing her final act of defiance would reach Earth. In that moment of calculated brutality, the Archon sealed the hegemony's fate without realizing it. Across the chamber, Commander Chen broke through enough of the stasis effect to activate the emergency extraction protocol, even as his body fought against the paralyzing field. 6 diplomatic staff managed to reach the emergency shuttle bay during the ensuing chaos, carrying with them the complete neural download from Elena's implant and irrefutable evidence of the hegemony's treachery broadcast across the stars. The diplomatic shuttle Hermes limped into Earth's orbit, its hull blackened by hegemony weapons fire. Emergency thrusters fired erratically, compensating for damaged stabilizers as Earth's orbital defense platforms tracked its approach. Inside Olympus Station's medical bay, Commander Chen winced as regenerative fields sealed the plasma burns across his torso. Admiral Sofia Hernandez watched the medical procedures with a controlled expression that betrayed none of the rage boiling beneath. "They broadcast it," Chen said, his voice hoarse from smoke inhalation. "They wanted us to see it, wanted Earth to see it." Hernandez nodded once. "The footage is being contained for now. Global panic won't help our response." Elena knew, Admiral. Chen gestured toward a quantum data core resting on a nearby tray. She had me carry a backup of her neural implant data, said it was standard protocol. But it wasn't. Hernandez picked up the small device. Elena suspected this might happen. She sent me coded warnings in her diplomatic updates. The Admiral's personal comm unit chimed with an urgent signal. "Coalition Security Council is assembled. They're waiting for your testimony, Commander." Within the station's secure conference chamber, representatives from Earth's unified governments sat in stunned silence as the unedited footage of Elena's assassination played on the central display. Chen noted the physical reactions: white knuckles, clenched jaws, the unmistakable posture of leaders preparing for war. When the recording ended, Coalition President Santiago broke the silence. The hegemony ambassador to the Proxima colony claims this was a regrettable cultural misunderstanding. They expect our immediate surrender and acceptance of vassal status. Their transmission buoys near our borders are broadcasting terms of submission, added Defense Minister Okurwa. They've given us 72 hours to acknowledge hegemony authority. General Katsumoto of the Asian Alliance slammed his fist on the table. "We should deploy everything we have. Show them humanity won't be intimidated." Hernandez remained standing, her calm at odds with the emotional current in the room. That's exactly what they expect. An emotional, disorganized response from a primitive species. An excuse to eliminate us entirely. She activated her security clearance, transforming the room's holographic display. The familiar image of Earth's modest defense fleet vanished, replaced by something entirely different, a vast array of military vessels hidden throughout the solar system. Project Phantasm was initiated 30 years ago, Hernandez explained as stunned council members absorbed the revelation. When our first deep space probes encountered hegemony territory, we understood the potential threat. Every public vessel, every civilian advancement, has had a military parallel developed in secret. The display shifted again, showing stealth ships disguised as asteroids, massive weapon platforms concealed within mining operations, and advanced warships hidden inside what the public believed were corporate space stations. We have vessels with phase shift technology reverse-engineered from salvaged hegemony craft, Hernandez continued. Quantum disruption weapons, advanced AI combat systems that operate beyond the predictive capabilities of hegemony tactical analysis. She inserted Chen's data core into the central console. And now, thanks to Ambassador Reyes' foresight, we have this: complete schematics of their defensive networks, command protocols, and communication vulnerabilities. Elena didn't just die for us. She armed us. President Santiago studied the tactical displays with growing comprehension. What are you proposing, Admiral? Operation Silent Warright. Hernandez expanded the star map to show hegemony territory. We go dark. Completely dark. Shut down all transmissions. Recall all human vessels from alien space. Let them think we're cowering in fear. Chen, despite his injuries, stood to join her at the display. Meanwhile, our stealth fleet deploys throughout their territory, mapping targets, placing quantum disruptors at key nodes. When we strike, we hit critical infrastructure simultaneously across 50 light-years of space, before they realize we're capable of such coordination. The hegemony has ruled through fear for 8 millennia, Hernandez concluded. They've forgotten what it means to face an enemy with nothing to lose. The Council voted unanimously. Within 6 hours, Earth went silent. All communication with hegemony worlds ceased. Civilian vessels were quietly recalled under communications blackout protocols. At the Proxima Centauri outpost, the hegemony ambassador smiled thinly as human communications fell silent. His report to Nexus Prime was triumphant. The primitives retreat in fear, as expected. Beneath Olympus Station, the first wave of stealth vessels slipped away from their docking cradles, their phase shift drives leaving no trace as they accelerated toward hegemony space. Operation Silent Wrath had begun. Commander Chen's stealth vessel, the HNS Phantom, drifted silently above the hegemony outpost on Denari VY. Through the viewport, the massive installation sprawled across the moon's cratered surface, its quantum communication spires reaching toward the stars. Orbital defense grid mapped and analyzed, reported Lieutenant Santos, her fingers dancing across the tactical interface. Shields cycle every 27.3 seconds, creating a 0.8-second vulnerability we can exploit. Chen studied the holographic display of the outpost. 6 months of silent observation had transformed him. The plasma burns had healed, but a coldness had settled in his eyes. The look of a man who had watched his friend die and was finally positioned to respond. Deployment status of the other strike teams, he asked. All 16 teams report ready, his XO confirmed. Synchronized strikes will commence on your mark, across all targeted outposts. Chen nodded, checking the chronometer. Earth had maintained total communications silence for half a standard year. The hegemony, believing humanity cowed into submission, had grown complacent. Their border patrols had thinned, their alert status downgraded. Commence Operation Nightfall, Chen ordered. Across 17 strategic outposts spanning a vast swath of hegemony space, human stealth vessels simultaneously decloaked and executed precision strikes. Not with overwhelming firepower, but with surgical accuracy born of months of patient observation. The Phantom dropped through Denari's defense grid during the brief shield cycling window, deploying specialized infiltration pods to key access points. Chen led the primary strike team himself, phase shift armor rendering them nearly invisible to internal sensors. Inside the outpost's command center, Sub-Archon Vril was enjoying a celebratory meal with his officers. The latest reports from the Sol system indicated the humans remained isolated in their home system, exactly as predicted by hegemony strategic models. Their behavioral patterns align perfectly with other Class 3 species when confronted with superior force. Vril commented, his upper appendages manipulating a drinking vessel. The Archon was correct to make a public example of their ambassador. The first indication that something was wrong came when the primary communication array went silent. Then the secondary. Then the emergency backup. In rapid succession, critical systems throughout the facility began shutting down, not from catastrophic failure, but from precise, coordinated sabotage. When security teams rushed to restore the quantum communication hub, They found nothing but empty corridors and disabled monitoring systems. When Sub-Archon Vril ordered his personal shuttle prepared for emergency evacuation, he opened the door to find Commander Chen waiting inside. "Ambassador Reyes sends her regards," Chen said before activating a neural disruptor. Across 17 similar facilities, the pattern repeated with methodical precision. Command staff captured rather than killed. Data systems completely downloaded before being wiped. Critical infrastructure disabled rather than destroyed. And everywhere, not a single alarm transmitted to the broader hegemony network. Aboard the Phantom, Dr. Amara Okafor, Earth's leading quantum intelligence researcher, interfaced directly with the outpost's seized data core. Her neural connection allowed her to process information at speeds no conventional system could match. "The encryption is exactly as Ambassador Reyes' data indicated," she confirmed, her eyes flickering beneath closed lids as her augmented mind navigated the hegemony systems. "I've extracted their complete command protocols, force deployments, and..." She paused, expression shifting to surprise. "Colonization plans for Earth. They were going to begin planetary restructuring within the year." Chen studied the translated documents with clinical detachment. Population reduction protocols, forced labor assignments, resource extraction priorities. Each sterile phrase represented billions of human lives the hegemony had intended to control or eliminate. "Transmit everything to Admiral Hernandez," he ordered. "Then implement Phase 2 of the infiltration algorithm." Dr. Okafor nodded, uploading a specialized AI construct into the hegemony network, a digital phantom designed to corrupt system logs, erase all evidence of the attack, and replace it with routine operational data. To the rest of the hegemony, these 17 outposts would appear to be functioning normally for weeks, even as human forces systematically dismantle them. As the Phantom prepared to depart, Chen stood in the command center of the captured outpost, surrounded by disabled alien technology and restrained hegemony officers. On the primary display screen, he uploaded a single image, Ambassador Reyes' official portrait, her expression determined and dignified. "First blood," he said quietly before returning to his ship. Within 12 hours, all 17 outposts had fallen, their command staff imprisoned, their databases stripped of intelligence, and their very existence effectively erased from hegemony awareness. The Empire's vast detection network now had 17 blind spots, through which the next phase of humanity's vengeance would pour. Supreme Strategist Xarvex stood before the Hegemony War Council, his tall, sinuous form dominating the circular chamber. Holographic displays surrounded him, showing the vast expanse of hegemony territory, 50,000 worlds spanning 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. "The human situation remains contained," he reported to the assembled military leaders. "Our intelligence suggests they've retreated entirely to their home system. 7th Battle Group stands ready to implement final pacification protocols at the Archon's command." A Tresic general, crystalline form refracting light as he moved, raised an appendage. "Some reports indicate unusual activity near our outer monitoring stations. Silent gaps in routine transmissions." Xarvex dismissed the concern with a fluid gesture. "Transmission anomalies are common in that sector. The equipment there is centuries old, maintained by lower-tier species. Nothing that warrants." His neural interface suddenly emitted a piercing shriek that dropped him to his knees. Around the chamber, every council member experienced the same debilitating pain as their quantum neural links. The instantaneous communication technology that had bound the Empire together for millennia simultaneously failed. In the hidden research facility orbiting Jupiter, Dr. Amara Okafor monitored the cascade failure with fierce satisfaction. The quantum disruption device, a massive ring surrounding the gas giant, powered by its immense magnetic field, pulsed with energy as it systematically severed every entangled particle pair connecting the hegemony's vast communication network. "Quantum entanglement disruptors are performing beyond expected parameters," she reported to Admiral Hernandez, who watched from the observation deck. "Complete systemic failure across 94% of monitored nodes." Hernandez studied the real-time intelligence feeds from stealth probes scattered throughout hegemony space. How long until they can re-establish communications? They can't, Okafor explained, her augmented eyes tracking multiple data streams simultaneously. The disruptor doesn't just sever the connections, it alters the quantum signature of the entangled particles. Even if they create new links, they can't match the original security protocols. Their entire command structure is now operating with the equivalent of smoke signals. Across hegemony space, the effects were immediate and devastating. Battle groups, unable to coordinate, made contradictory decisions. Some hyperspace jumped to defensive positions around core worlds, while others launched attacks against phantom human fleets created by false intelligence deliberately leaked weeks earlier. On the hegemony capital world of Nexus Prime, the Archon himself discovered that his commands could now travel only at the speed of light, taking years to reach distant provinces of his once unified empire. Aboard the HMS Retribution, Admiral Hernandez addressed the commanders of humanity's first strike force, 50 phase-shift-capable destroyers assembled at the edge of hegemony space. For 30 years, we prepared for this possibility, she told them, her voice steady. We studied them while they dismissed us. We adapted their technologies while they underestimated our intelligence. Today, we demonstrate that humanity will not be subjugated. The primary target of the first strike force wasn't a population center or government installation, but the massive shipyards at Tannhauser Gate, capable of producing dreadnoughts that could threaten Earth. As human vessels materialized within the shipyard's defensive perimeter, the hegemony forces responded with confusion rather than coordinated resistance. Their tactical computers, programmed with thousands of years of conventional warfare data, had no protocols for the irregularly coordinated attack patterns of human vessels. Major Darius Wade led the specialized demolition teams deployed to critical infrastructure points throughout the shipyards. An Earth Force special operator who had lost his sister aboard a research vessel accidentally destroyed by hegemony forces years earlier. Wade moved with cold efficiency as he placed quantum-destabilized charges at antimatter containment facilities. This isn't just about revenge, he told his team as they worked. It's about making sure they can never threaten our homeworld. As the final charges were set, Wade affixed a physical printed image of Ambassador Reyes to the primary detonator. This one's for Elena, he whispered as his team evacuated. The resulting chain reaction transformed the largest shipbuilding facility in the Galactic sector into an expanding sphere of plasma and debris. No warning had reached Hegemony Command. No distress call had been transmitted through the severed quantum network. As the human fleet phase shifted away from the destruction, leaving no trace of their presence, Admiral Hernandez received confirmation of 17 simultaneous strikes across hegemony space, all successful, all undetected by Central Command. Second phase targets are confirmed, her tactical officer reported. The hegemony is still blind to our movements. Hernandez nodded, studying the strategic display where hundreds of hegemony vessels moved in disorganized patterns, searching for an enemy they couldn't detect or communicate about effectively. Proceed to Phase 3, she ordered. The empire built on fear will learn what it means to be afraid. Grand Marshal Kure stood on the command deck of the Immortal Dominion, a dreadnought 17 kilometers long with enough firepower to shatter planetary crusts. Through the vast viewing portal, he watched his armada assemble. 500 capital ships drawn from across the hegemony, the largest battle fleet assembled in 3 centuries. The humans have shown surprising cunning, he admitted to his senior commanders. Their strikes against our outposts were unanticipated. But primitive ingenuity cannot stand against concentrated force. The Marshal's exoskeleton clicked as he moved to the strategic display. Without quantum communications, coordinating the armada had required weeks of conventional planning, with courier ships delivering physical command protocols. Our target is Proxima Centauri, he continued, humanity's first and most symbolic colony. We will obliterate it completely, demonstrating the futility of resistance. The psychological impact will force Earth's surrender without risking damage to the resource-rich Sol system. An aide approached, mandibles twitching nervously. "Marshal, we've received reports that human vessels have been sighted near the Tsari homeworld. The regional commander requests reinforcements." "Ignore it," Tyr ordered. "Another diversion. Our intelligence confirms their main fleet remains in the Sol system. They lack the numbers to defend both." The Armada entered hyperspace in perfect formation, weapons primed for immediate engagement upon arrival. When they emerged in the Proxima Centauri system, sensors detected the expected human defensive line, a thin screen of vessels positioned to protect the main colony. Zyr's mandibles clicked in satisfaction. Pitiful. They've committed exactly the forces our models predicted. Begin the attack pattern. Then a tactical officer's voice broke the confident atmosphere. "Marshal, additional contacts appearing behind our formation." The strategic display transformed as hundreds of human vessels phase-shifted into reality, materializing in positions that, according to all known physics, should have been impossible to achieve. Not appearing from hyperspace at the system's edge, but simply appearing already inside the formation. The bridge speakers crackled with an external transmission overriding command frequencies. "Grand Marshal Xur," a female voice, calm and measured. "This is Admiral Sofia Hernandez of Earth Force. I studied your battle tactics at the Academy. I've been looking forward to this." Xur's compound eyes widened as the tactical display updated again. Human vessels were not just behind his fleet, but all around it, above, below, ahead. A perfect three-dimensional encirclement. "Impossible," he hissed. "Our scouts confirmed their defensive position. They cannot have numbers sufficient for." "What you saw, Marshal," Hernandez's voice continued, "was exactly what we wanted you to see." The human attack came from all directions simultaneously. Their vessels, smaller but more maneuverable, executed combat patterns the hegemony had never encountered. Where hegemony tactical doctrine emphasized overwhelming force projected from optimal distance, human craft dove into point-blank range, executing turns and maneuvers that hegemony targeting systems classified as suicidal, until they succeeded repeatedly. On the Immortal Dominion's bridge, chaos erupted as damage reports flooded in from throughout the Armada. Quantum phase torpedoes bypassed shields calibrated to stop conventional weapons. Human fighters executed attack runs that brought them within meters of capital ship hulls, delivering precision strikes against propulsion and weapon systems. "They're not trying to destroy our vessels," the tactical officer realized with growing horror. "They're disabling them systematically. Weapons, engines, communication arrays." Xur slammed an armored appendage against the command console. "Prepare the planet killer. If we cannot win conventionally, we will make an example of their colony." Deep within the dreadnought, ancient weapons stirred to life. Technology from the early days of the hegemony's expansion, designed to crack planetary crusts and render worlds uninhabitable. As massive energy capacitors began charging, Tyr allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Even in defeat, he would fulfill the core of his mission, demonstrating the price of defying the Empire. The proximity alert shattered his confidence. Something had appeared inside the Immortal Dominion's own defensive shields. An impossibility. The HMS Retribution, Admiral Hernandez's flagship, had executed what hegemony physicists deemed theoretically impossible, a combat speed phase shift precisely calibrated to bypass the larger vessel's defenses. The human vessel materialized barely 500 meters from the dreadnought's command tower. Before Tyr could issue new orders, boarding craft launched from the Retribution, their trajectories calculated to attach to emergency access points identified in Elena Reyes' intelligence cache. Special operations teams led by Commander Chen breached the massive vessel at 12 key points simultaneously. The bridge doors slammed open as human forces fought their way through internal defenses. Chen himself led the final assault, his phase shift armor still smoking from energy weapon impacts. "Grand Marshal Xur," he said, removing his helmet to reveal a face marked by determination. and the scars of previous battles. In the name of the United Coalition of Earth, I place you under arrest for war crimes against humanity." As the marshal was secured, Admiral Hernandez's voice transmitted to the remaining hegemony fleet. "Your commander is captured. Your advantage is lost. Surrender or follow him into captivity." One by one, the surviving hegemony ships powered down their weapons systems. A battle that, according to hegemony strategic doctrine, should have been an overwhelming victory had instead become the most significant military defeat in their 8,000-year history. From the bridge of the Retribution, Hernandez surveyed the disabled hegemony fleet, now surrounded by human vessels and allied ships from species who had seized the opportunity to break free from Imperial control. "Send word to Earth," she ordered. "Proxima stands. The path to Nexus Prime is open." The Archon's private sanctuary deep beneath Nexus Prime trembled with his rage, his mercury-form body rippling with distortion patterns never before seen in his species. The chamber, designed to be an impenetrable haven, had become a prison as reports from across the Empire arrived in fragments, carried by courier ships rather than instantaneous quantum transmission. 17 core worlds lost in the past month alone, reported Council Elder Mox, his chidnous exoskeleton clicking nervously as he delivered the news. "The humans aren't just defeating our forces, they're dismantling our social order." The Archon's fluid form coalesced into a more solid state, a sign of his focus hardening. "Explain." "They establish self-determination councils on captured worlds," Mox continued, mandibles twitching anxiously. "They're helping local species establish their own governance rather than imposing occupation authorities. The Azrathi mining colonies in Sector 7 actually welcomed human forces after witnessing footage of special forces rescuing Azrathi civilians we had designated as expendable during our retreat. The intelligence minister, a being of gaseous composition contained within an ornate environmental suit, floated forward. Most disturbing is the situation with the Tsari. Their high command has officially declared neutrality after observing human combat methods. Neutrality. The Archon's voice became dangerously soft. The Tsari have served as our elite warriors for 5,000 years. They cannot simply withdraw. Their formal declaration states only, they fight with honor. We will not stand against them. The minister's voice modulator conveyed his discomfort. Our attempts to compel their continued service have been unsuccessful. A holographic display activated, showing the human-led coalition fleet approaching the sacred hegemony world of Illuminus Prime, home to the Empire's largest military shipyards outside the core systems. But rather than meeting resistance, the approaching vessels were being escorted by Illuminus defense craft. "The local governor has been overthrown," Mox explained. "Planetary defense forces mutinied after learning of our losses at Proxima Centauri. They're offering the shipyards to the human cause." The Archon's form rippled violently. "Designate Illuminus Prime for immediate suppression. Deploy the stellar suppressors." A shocked silence fell over the chamber. Elder Mox raised a clawed appendage in protest. "The suppressors are forbidden by our own ancient laws to use planet-killing weapons against one of our sacred worlds." "I am the law," the Archon interrupted, his voice echoing metallically. "If we cannot maintain control, we will ensure no one benefits from these rebellions." 3 council representatives immediately rose from their seats, their postures conveying unmistakable protest. The Tresic representative's crystalline form vibrated with harmonic tones of formal dissent. "The Tresic concordance withdraws from this chamber and from the Hegemony Council," the crystalline being announced. "We will not be party to such abomination." 2 other species followed, their representatives transmitting the Archon's orders to their homeworlds and secretly to human command. By the time the stellar suppressor vessels were activated from their ancient containment facilities, half the council had abandoned the chamber. Aboard the Retribution, Admiral Hernandez stood on the bridge observing tactical displays that mapped the growing coalition. What had begun as Earth's solitary vengeance had transformed into a multi-species revolution against millennia of hegemony oppression. The Archon has ordered deployment of forbidden weapons against Illuminus Prime, Commander Chen reported, reviewing encrypted transmissions from defecting Council species. Planet killers. Admiral Hernandez's expression remained calm, but her eyes hardened. Move the Third Fleet to intercept, and prepare a direct transmission to Nexus Prime. The Coalition fleet, now comprising vessels from 17 formerly subjugated species alongside human ships, formed up around the Retribution. Species that had been enemies under hegemony rule now coordinated their movements with surprising harmony, united by the common goal of freedom. As the transmission was prepared, Hernandez gazed at the holographic display, showing the vast alliance they had inadvertently created. What had begun as humanity's war of survival had become something far more profound, the dismantling of an empire built on fear and the birth of something new. Her voice, when the transmission began, carried not just the authority of Earth, but the combined determination of hundreds of worlds now fighting for their independence. This message is for the being known as Lord Vextor, Archon of the Galactic Hegemony. She began, her tone unyielding. The empire you have ruled through fear for 8 millennia is finished. Your authority collapses not just from external force, but from the weight of your own tyranny. She paused, letting the message transmit across the thousands of worlds still monitoring hegemony frequencies. Surrender those responsible for Ambassador Raya's murder for justice, or we will dismantle your thousand-sun empire piece by piece, not through destruction, but by offering something you never could, the freedom of self-determination. Throughout the empire, on countless worlds where the transmission reached, oppressed species watched with growing hope as the unthinkable happened. Someone was not just fighting the hegemony but winning, systematically dismantling an empire that had seemed eternal and invincible. The once Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime stood eerily silent, where representatives from 12 founding species had once gathered to decide the fate of thousands of worlds. Only 4 remained. The rest had abandoned the hegemony as news of its defeats spread across the galaxy. Outside the planetary defense grid, the combined fleet of humanity and its allies held position. Not just human vessels anymore, but ships from 23 formerly subjugated species, their distinctive designs creating a mosaic of liberation in the space above the imperial capital. Within the chamber, quiet rebellion brewed among even the Archon's closest advisors. Sub-Minister Krell, who had served the Empire loyally for 3 centuries, approached the Archon's days with careful deference. The outer defense fleet has surrendered without engagement, he reported, his voice carefully neutral. Admiral Hernandez has offered safe passage to all civilian vessels wishing to evacuate. The Archon's mercurial form had lost its lustrous sheen, becoming dull and sluggish, a physical manifestation of the Empire's decline, and our remaining loyalist commanders. Requesting permission to surrender, Krell admitted. The Coalition forces have demonstrated that resistance is impractical. The Archon's form rippled violently. Impractical. 8,000 years of dominance, and they speak of practicality. He rose from his seat, flowing toward the ancient control interface embedded in the chamber's central platform. If I cannot rule, no one will have Nexus Prime. His liquid metal appendages interfaced with the console, activating protocols that had been theoretical since the Empire's founding. The planetary doomsday sequence. Deep within the planet's core, ancient weapons began to stir, designed to tear the world apart rather than allow it to fall to invaders. Aboard the Retribution, Dr. Okafor's quantum sensors detected the energy surge immediately. He's activated some kind of doomsday protocol, she reported, her augmented eyes widening at the readings. Energy signatures suggest geothermal destabilization on a planetary scale. Admiral Hernandez turned to Commander Chen. How long? Based on these readings, less than 30 minutes before critical cascade failure begins, he answered, already moving toward the deployment bay. I'll lead the strike team. This isn't a request, Marcus, Hernandez said, using his first name for the first time since the war began. "This is practically a suicide mission." Chen paused, his expression resolute. "Elena never backed down. Neither will I." The infiltration team deployed in specialized insertion pods, designed to penetrate planetary defense systems during their automated recalibration cycles. Another vulnerability identified in Ambassador Reyes' intelligence cache. As they breached the atmosphere, the first tremors began rippling across the planet's surface. Massive tectonic instabilities as the doomsday weapons began their work. The planetary defense complex, a massive structure honeycombed with lethal security systems, had already begun emergency lockdown procedures when Chen's team breached the outer perimeter. Racing through corridors that trembled with increasing violence, they fought past the remaining loyal guards toward the central control chamber. "The core destabilization is accelerating," reported Dr. Okafor through their neural links. "You have less than 10 minutes before irreversible cascade." Chen burst into the central chamber to find the Archon alone, his liquid metal form physically connected to the planet's control systems. "Your kind were never meant to challenge us," the alien ruler hissed, his form shifting erratically between solid and liquid states. "We ruled the stars before your ancestors crawled from the oceans. And yet here we are," Chen replied, activating not his weapons, but a neural-linked command that uploaded the final program Ambassador Reyes had embedded in the hegemony network before her death. The effect was immediate. The Archon froze in mid-transformation, caught between states as the override protocols imprisoned him in his own connection to the planetary systems. "Elena anticipated everything," Chen explained to the paralyzed tyrant, "including your willingness to destroy everything rather than accept defeat." Working quickly, Chen's team accessed the core controls, initiating the emergency shutdown sequence for the doomsday devices. The tremors gradually subsided as the ancient weapons powered down, leaving the planet damaged but intact. 3 months later, the newly formed Galactic Concord held its inaugural assembly in the reconstructed council chamber. The central days, once reserved exclusively for the Archon, now hosted representatives from all member species, former enemies united in a new vision of governance where technological advancement and military power no longer determined a species' worth. The first unanimous vote established the Elena Reyes diplomatic principles, enshrining the right of all sentient beings to self-determination and peaceful coexistence. After the session, Admiral, now Ambassador, Hernandez approached the memorial flame that burned at the chamber center. The holographic image of Elena Reyes rotated slowly above it, her expression captured at a moment of diplomatic triumph rather than her final defiance. Hernandez placed her hand on the inscription beneath. "She came seeking peace and found tyranny. We came seeking justice and built a new dawn." Around her stood representatives of 47 species, including several former Hegemony Council members who had chosen the right side of history. Together they observed a moment of silence, not just for Elena, but for all who had suffered under the Empire's long shadow. Beyond the chamber's great windows, Earth vessels prepared for departure. Their mission complete, they would return to a home that now existed in a vastly different galaxy. One where humanity had transformed from an isolated species into the architects of a new era of interstellar cooperation. Commander Chen, standing at Hernandez's side, looked out at the assembled representatives with quiet satisfaction. "Humanity doesn't want to rule," he said, echoing words he had spoken to the Archon during that final confrontation. "We just refuse to be ruled." As the Earth ships broke orbit, species that had once feared or dismissed humans raised their voices in a traditional salute that transcended the babble of different languages and physiologies. The message was clear in any tongue. Humanity had come as Avengers, but would be remembered as liberators.